Florida is built on an impossible promise. And that promise is about to break. Beneath the theme parks, the retirement communities, the endless suburban sprawl, the very ground is dissolving. Right now, millions of people are living on top of a geological time bomb, and most of them don't even know it. The threat is not a hurricane, not a flood. It is the land itself giving way, swallowing homes, roads, and lives in an instant. Not a crack, not a sinkhole, a collapse. Complete and without warning. So the state is fighting back with an invisible, underground war, injecting millions of tons of concrete into the earth just to keep it from falling apart. It's a desperate, multi-billion-dollar effort to patch a wound that can't be healed. But here's what they won't tell you. The patches are failing. The holes are getting bigger. And the very water that gives Florida life is also the weapon that's tearing it apart from below. So the real question is Florida just repairing its foundation, or is it just pouring concrete into a void that has no bottom? This is a story about the ground beneath our feet, and why in some places it's no longer solid. If you have ever felt that sense of unease about the world's hidden fragilities, tell us about it in the comments below. It's a conversation we need to have. An astonishing number of people watch these deep dives every week, yet a huge majority are not subscribed. If you believe this work is important, taking 1 second to click that button is the most powerful way to support it. That's it. Let's begin. Florida was never meant to be solid. The peninsula is a geological anomaly, a platform of ancient marine limestone built over millions of years from the skeletal remains of sea creatures. This rock, known as karst, is porous, soft, and fatally vulnerable to a single, relentless enemy. Water, rainwater, naturally acidic, seeps through the soil and begins a slow, silent process of dissolution. It doesn't erode the limestone like a river carving a canyon. It hollows it out from the inside, creating a hidden, three-dimensional labyrinth of caverns, conduits, and voids just beneath the surface. For eons, this process was in a state of delicate equilibrium. The limestone dissolved, but the vast Floridan aquifer, one of the most productive aquifers in the world, filled those voids with water. That water exerted hydrostatic pressure, pushing back against the weight of the sand and clay above it, holding the surface up. The ground was not solid rock, it was a water-supported structure. A bubble of stability maintained by a perfect balance of dissolution and pressure. That balance is now gone. It was never a permanent condition, it was a geological grace period. The story of Florida's instability begins with its creation. Think of the peninsula not as a piece of land, but as a sponge. A massive, flat sponge made of calcium carbonate, sitting precariously at sea level. During ice ages, when sea levels fell, this sponge was exposed to the air and the rain. Acidic water trickled down, dissolving passages. During warmer interglacial periods, when sea levels rose, the sponge was submerged and the process slowed or stopped. This cycle repeated for millennia, creating the intricate network of underground plumbing that defines the state today. The Florida you see, the swamps, the lakes, the springs, is merely the surface expression of this hidden world. The state has over 1,000 freshwater springs, more than any other region on the planet. These are not sources of new water. They are windows. They are points where the aquifer, pressurized from deep within the earth, breaches the surface. They are direct outlets from the subterranean river system that holds the entire landscape together. The early developers and inhabitants saw paradise. They saw abundant fresh water, flat land perfect for building, and a seemingly endless frontier. What they didn't see, what they couldn't see, was the void beneath their feet. They were building a civilization on a foundation that was, by its very nature, designed to disappear. That fragile equilibrium was first broken, not by malice, but by ambition. In the early 20th century, Florida was America's swampy, mosquito-infested backyard. Then came the dreamers, the developers, and the engineers. They saw wetlands not as vital ecosystems, but as obstacles. They drained vast portions of the Everglades to create farmland. They dredged canals to connect lakes and control floods. They began to perforate the thin layer of soil and clay that separated the surface world from the aquifer below. Every canal dug, every well drilled was a new pathway for water to move in ways the natural system had never intended. Yet, the population remained small. In 1950, fewer than 3 million people lived in the entire state. The geological system, while disturbed, could still compensate. The aquifer remained high. The pressure held. The ground stayed, for the most part, put. Then came the boom. The advent of air conditioning, the construction of the interstate highway system, and the marketing of Florida as a year-round paradise for retirees and tourists triggered one of the most dramatic population migrations in modern history. The numbers are staggering. The population doubled to 5 million by 1960. It nearly doubled again to 9.7 million by 1980. Today, it stands at over 22 million people, with an estimated 1,000 new residents arriving every single day. And every single one of them needs water. And every single one of them needs a place to live. The entire apparatus of modern Florida, its cities, its agriculture, its tourism, is powered by a single invisible engine, the Floridan aquifer. It provides drinking water for over 90% of the state's population. It irrigates billions of dollars worth of citrus, strawberries, and tomatoes. It is the lifeblood. It is also the vulnerability. To meet the insatiable demand, hundreds of thousands of wells were drilled across the state. These wells are not just sipping from the aquifer. They are performing a kind of reverse pressure injection. They are straws, sucking out the very water that was holding the ground up. The math is brutal and unforgiving. As water is pumped out faster than rainfall can replenish it, the water table drops. The hydrostatic pressure that supported the roofs of those ancient water-filled caverns weakens. The void, once filled and stable, is now empty and supported by nothing. The thin layer of sand and clay on top is left hanging, a bridge over an abyss it was never meant to span. And that raises a deeply unsettling thought. What invisible structures exist beneath your own town? Let us know your region's hidden geological story in the comments. Eventually, that bridge fails. Sometimes, it happens slowly. A gradual sagging of the land, known as a subsidence sinkhole, creates a shallow depression, a bowl in the landscape that grows over months or years. These are inconvenient. They crack foundations, break pipelines, and create phantom ponds that flood during heavy rains. But the other kind of failure is different. It is sudden. It is catastrophic. A cover collapse sinkhole. This is what happens when the cavern roof gives way all at once. The sand and clay above it, often appearing perfectly stable just moments before, loses its support and flows down into the void like sand in an hourglass. The result is not a depression. It is a hole. A vertical, walled, terrifyingly deep chasm that appears in seconds. One moment, there is a house, a road, a parking lot. The next, there is nothing. Just a dark, circular wound in the earth. This is the critical failure point that haunts geologists and engineers in Florida. It is unpredictable, it is instantaneous, and it is happening more and more often. The United States Geological Survey, or USGS, has a term for the region in central Florida where this is most common. They call it Sinkhole Alley, a stretch of land following the I-4 corridor from Tampa to Orlando, home to millions of people, a booming economy, and some of the most dangerously unstable karst geology on the continent. The aha moment for state geologists wasn't a single event, but a terrifying pattern. They noticed a direct correlation between sinkhole formation and two human activities: aggressive groundwater pumping and new construction. The pumping was the primary culprit. During periods of drought, when farmers ran their irrigation pumps 24/7 to save their crops, clusters of sinkholes would suddenly appear. One infamous event in 1977 saw over 100 sinkholes open up in a single day in Hillsborough County, a direct result of frost prevention pumping at nearby citrus groves. The water table dropped dramatically in a matter of hours, and the ground simply gave way. The second factor was construction. The weight of new buildings, roads, and swimming pools adds a load to the surface layer. But more importantly, the vibration from construction equipment, the pile drivers, the heavy machinery, can be the final straw that triggers the collapse of an already weakened cavern roof. Engineers were, in effect, building the trigger for the bomb they were placing on its surface. Florida had created a perfect storm, a rapidly growing population demanding more water and more housing, situated directly on top of a geological system that collapses when you take its water and shake its surface. It was not a crisis of nature, it was a crisis of design. A collision between human ambition and geological reality. The stories of those who lose everything in an instant are a stark reminder of the stakes. Sharing this documentary with your family isn't just about spreading a video, it's about raising awareness. If you feel this information is valuable, a like helps us reach more people. The most infamous case, the one that brought the horror into sharp focus for the entire world, happened on February 28, 2013, in the quiet town of Seffner, just east of Tampa. Just after 11 p.m., a man named Jeremy Bush heard a loud crash and a scream from his brother Jeff's bedroom. He ran to the room, threw open the door, and saw nothing. The bed was gone. The dresser was gone. The television was gone. His brother was gone. In their place was a hole, a pit of dark earth that had swallowed the entire room. Jeremy jumped into the hole, digging frantically with his bare hands, screaming for his brother. But the earth was still moving, still collapsing. A sheriff's deputy had to pull him out, saving his life just as the hole widened further. Jeff Bush, aged 37, was never seen again. His body was never recovered. The sinkhole had opened directly beneath his bed while he slept, pulling him down into the earth. It was a cover-collapse sinkhole, estimated to be 30 feet wide and over 60 feet deep. The house was condemned, demolished. The hole was filled with gravel and concrete. But the story became a permanent scar on the state's psyche. It was the ultimate nightmare realized. The ground, the very symbol of solidity, had become a predator. The Seffner sinkhole was not an isolated incident. It was simply the most tragic. In 1981, a massive sinkhole opened in the middle of Winter Park, a wealthy suburb of Orlando. Over the course of a single day, it grew to 350 feet wide and 75 feet deep. It swallowed a house, 5 Porsches from a car dealership, and a significant portion of a municipal swimming pool. The event became a tourist attraction, a spectacle of geological terror. In 2018, a chain of 12 sinkholes opened up in a residential neighborhood in Ocala, forcing the evacuation of multiple homes. One swallowed a car hole. Geologists linked the event to heavy rainfall from Hurricane Irma, which had saturated the ground, adding weight and altering underground water pressures. The irony is excruciating. The droughts cause sinkholes by removing the water that supports the ground, and the hurricanes cause sinkholes by adding so much water that it destabilizes the ground. Florida is caught in a geological vise. Too little water, and the voids collapse. Too much water, and the surface layer turns to liquid and flows into the voids. There is no safe middle ground. There is only a narrowing path of stability, and the state is rapidly running out of room to walk. Faced with an existential threat, Florida did what Florida does. It engineered a solution. Or, more accurately, it engineered a treatment. An entire industry, known as sinkhole remediation or ground stabilization, has exploded across the central part of the state. The primary weapon in this underground war is concrete. Specifically, a technique called compaction grouting. The process is brutal in its simplicity. A crew drills a series of holes around and through the affected area, deep into the unstable soil layers. Then, they pump a thick, low-slump concrete mixture into the earth under immense pressure. The goal is not to fill the cavern below. The caverns are often too vast, their true dimensions unknown. The goal is to create a series of underground concrete pillars, to densify the loose soil, to transfer the structural load from the surface down to the more stable limestone bedrock far below. It is a desperate, brute force attempt to replace the missing water pressure with man-made columns of stone. Engineers describe it as trying to repair a shattered dinner plate from the bottom up through a pinhole without ever being able to see the full extent of the damage. The scale of this operation is almost impossible to comprehend. A typical residential remediation project can involve drilling dozens of holes and injecting hundreds of cubic yards of grout. The cost for a single home can easily run from $50,000 to over $150,000. For commercial buildings or highways, the costs spiral into the millions. It is a constant, unending battle. For every hole they patch, the underlying conditions are creating a dozen more. It is a business built on failure. The insurance industry in Florida has been driven to the brink by sinkhole claims. For years, policies in Sinkhole Alley included comprehensive coverage. Homeowners filed claims not just for catastrophic collapses, but for minor stair-step cracks in their drywall, evidence of slow subsidence. Claims skyrocketed. Insurance companies, facing billions in payouts, either fled the state or successfully lobbied the legislature to radically change the law. Today, the definition of a sinkhole loss is so narrow that it effectively only covers an actual structural collapse. The cracks, the sagging floors, the signs of the ground giving way are no longer covered. Homeowners are